13th Letter. I am in pain to see you suffer so long. What gives me some ease, and sweetens the feeling I have of your griefs, is that they are proofs of God's love toward you. See them in that view, and you will bear them more easily. As your case is, it is my opinion that you should leave off human remedies, and resign yourself entirely to the providence of God. Perhaps he stays only for that resignation, and a perfect trust in him to cure you. Since notwithstanding all your cares, physic has hitherto proved unsuccessful, and your malady still increases, it will not be tempting God to abandon yourself in his hands, and expect all from him. I told you in my last that he sometimes permits bodily diseases to cure the distempers of the soul. Have courage, then. Make a virtue of necessity. Ask of God, not deliverance from your pains, but strength to bear resolutely for the love of him all that he should please, and as long as he shall please. Such prayers indeed are a little hard to nature, but most acceptable to God, and sweet to those that love him. Love sweetens pains, and when one loves God, one suffers for his sake with joy and courage. Do you so, I beseech you. Comfort yourself with him who is the only physician of all our maladies. He is the Father of the afflicted, always ready to help us. He loves us infinitely more than we imagine. Love him then, and seek not consolation elsewhere. I hope you will soon receive it. Adieu. I will help you with my prayers, poor as they are, and shall be always yours in our Lord.
A railway station?
Bear with me. At this point in time, the enemy's demand on humans takes the form of a dilemma. Either complete abstinence or unmitigated monogamy. Ever since our father's first great victory, we have rendered the former very difficult to them. The latter, for the last few centuries, we have been closing up as a means of escape.
Well, how have we accomplished such a thing?
Here. Notice the wares of this bookseller. You see the titles? Romance, passion, intrigues. We have used poets and novelists to persuade the humans that a curious and usually short-lived experience which they call being in love is the only respectable ground for marriage. That marriage can and ought to render this excitement permanent, and that a marriage which does not do so is no longer binding. This idea is our parody of an idea that came from the enemy.
How amusing.
Yes. The whole philosophy of hell rests on the recognition of the axiom that one thing is not another thing, and especially that oneself is not another self. My good is my good, and your good is yours. What one gains, another loses. Even an inanimate object is what it is by excluding all other objects from the space it occupies. If it expands, it does so by thrusting other objects aside or by absorbing them. A self does the same. With beasts, the absorption takes the form of eating. For us, it means the sucking of will and freedom out of a weaker self into a stronger. To be means to be in competition.
These are basic facts.
To us, yes. Now, the enemy's philosophy is nothing more or less than one continued attempt to evade this very obvious truth. He aims at a contradiction. Things are to be many, yet somehow also one. The good of oneself is to be the good of another. This impossibility he calls love. And this same monotonous panacea can be detected under all he does, and even all he is or claims to be. Thus he is not content, even himself, to be a sheer arithmetical unity. He claims to be 3 as well as 1 in order that this nonsense about love may find a foothold in his own nature. At the other end of the scale, he introduces into matter that obscene invention, the organism, in which the parts are perverted from their natural destiny of competition and made to cooperate.
I'm sorry, Uncle, but I don't understand what this has to do with sex.
The enemy's real motive for fixing on sex as the method of reproduction amongst humans is only too apparent from the use he has made of it. Sex might have been, from our point of view, quite innocent. It might have been merely one more mode in which a stronger self preyed upon a weaker, as it is, indeed, among the spiders, where the bride concludes her nuptials by eating her groom.
I enjoy that part.
But in the humans, the enemy has gratuitously connected affection between the parties with sexual desire. He has also made the offspring dependent on the parents, and given the parents an impulse to support it, thus producing the family, which is like the organism, only worse, where the members are more distinct, yet also united in a more conscious and responsible way. The whole thing, in fact, turns out to be simply one more device for dragging in love. Now comes the joke. The enemy described a married couple as one flesh. He did not say a happily married couple or a couple who married because they were in love, but you can make the humans ignore that. You can also make them forget that the man they call Saint Paul did not confine it to married couples. Mere copulation for him makes one flesh.
Right, and the point is?
Isn't it obvious? You can get the humans to accept as rhetorical eulogies of being in love what were in fact plain descriptions of the real significance of sexual intercourse. The truth is, wherever a man lies with a woman, there, whether they like it or not, a transcendental relation is set up between them. This relation must be eternally enjoyed or eternally endured.
Right.
From the true statement that this transcendental relation was intended to produce affection and the family, humans can be made to infer the false belief that the blend of affection, fear, and desire, which they call being in love, is the only thing that makes marriage either happy or holy. The error is easy to produce because being in love does very often in Western Europe precede marriages which are made in obedience to the enemy's designs. That is, with the intention of fidelity, fertility, and goodwill, just as religious emotion very often, but not always, attends conversion. In other words, the humans are to be encouraged to regard as the basis for marriage a highly colored and distorted version of something the enemy really promises as its result.
I see. Sort of. But what exactly is the advantage of this effort?
There are 2 advantages. In the first place, humans who have not the gift of self-control can be deterred from seeking marriage as a solution because they do not find themselves in love. And thanks to us, the idea of marrying with any other motive seems to them low and cynical.
Do they really believe that?
They do. They regard the intention of loyalty to a partnership for mutual help, for the preservation of chastity, and for the transmission of life as something lower than a storm of emotion. In the second place, any sexual infatuation, whatever, so long as it intends marriage, will be regarded as love, and love will be held to excuse a man from all the guilt and to protect him from all the consequences of marrying a heathen, a fool, or a wanton.
But this business of the humans being in love, is that desirable or not?
Really, Wormwood, that is the sort of question one expects them to ask. Leave them to discuss whether love or patriotism or celibacy or candles on altars or teetotalism or education are good or bad. Can't you see? There is no answer.
Oh.
Nothing matters at all except the tendency of a given state of mind in given circumstances to move a particular patient at a particular moment nearer to the enemy or nearer to us. Though there are advantages in making the patient decide that love is good or bad.
Oh, how so?
Well, if he is an arrogant man with a contempt for the body really based on delicacy, but mistaken by him for purity, and one who takes pleasure in flouting what most of his fellows approve, by all means, let him decide against love. Instill into him an overweening asceticism, and then, when you have separated his sexuality from all that might humanize it, weigh in on him with it in a much more brutal and cynical form. If, on the other hand, he is an emotional, gullible man, feed him on minor poets and fifth-rate novelists of the old school until you have made him believe that love is both irresistible and somehow intrinsically meritorious. This belief is not much help, I grant you, in producing casual unchastity, but it is an incomparable recipe for prolonged, noble, romantic, tragic adulteries that end, if all goes well, in murders and suicides. Failing that, it can be used to steer the patient into a useful marriage.
Oh?
Well, there must be several young women in your patient's neighborhood who would render the Christian life intensely difficult to him if only you could persuade him to marry one of them. Please send me a report on this.
Yes, sir.
In the meantime, get it quite clear in your own mind that this state of falling in love is not itself necessarily favorable either to us or to the other side. It is simply an occasion which we and the enemy are both trying to exploit. Like most of the other things which humans are excited about, such as health and sickness, age and youth, or war and peace, it is, from the point of view of the spiritual life, mainly raw material. Got it?
Yes, Uncle.